One meal. That's all a true samurai needed. No luxury, no flavor, just discipline in a bowl. Miyamoto Musashi, Japan's greatest swordsman, didn't dine. He trained through food. And the meal that symbolized a samurai's soul? It wasn't meat, it wasn't sake, it was rice and miso. And you're about to find out why. But before you think that sounds too peaceful, let me remind you, these were men who sharpened their swords with calm hands, then sliced through bone. This is the brutal samurai diet that fueled legends. They weren't warriors by birth, they were carved from discipline, shaped by hunger, and fueled by a philosophy sharper than any blade. The samurai didn't just fight battles on the battlefield, they fought them at the dinner table. While emperors feasted and merchants indulged, the true samurai lived on humility and miso soup. Yes, miso soup! Miyamoto Musashi, undefeated in over 60 duels, didn't eat to enjoy. He ate to transcend. No sake, no sweets, no distractions, just focus, grit, and an iron stomach. He once wrote, "Do nothing that is of no use." And that included indulgent food. To the samurai, eating was a ritual, a test, a preparation before the next clash of steel. While the West glorified warriors through meat and mead, the samurai embraced silence, rice, and fermented simplicity. Because real warriors don't need flavor, they need clarity, and what they ate will shock you by the end. A final dish that defies everything you thought you knew about legendary warriors. So stay with us. The blade gets sharper with every bite. Miyamoto Musashi wasn't just a swordsman. He was an ascetic warrior, a ronin who abandoned luxury in pursuit of mastery. While other samurai dined with ceremony, Musashi often ate alone in silence, with food that reflected his philosophy, pure, disciplined, and brutally simple. His daily fuel? A wooden bowl of miso soup, a handful of steamed rice, and a few pickled vegetables. That's it. No wagyu, no sake, no multi-course kaisei. Why? Because indulgence dulled the edge. And Musashi's edge was legendary. He lived as if he were already dead. A principle from the samurai code, bushido. Every duel could be his last, so every bite had to serve purpose, not pleasure. He believed that the body, like the blade, must be honed. Fasting wasn't a punishment, it was training. Eating bland food, a practice in mental fortitude. This was nutrition as warfare. He once went days without eating before a duel, training not only his sword hand, but his mind. To Musashi, hunger was a weapon, and if you think that's intense, just wait, because later in this video, we'll reveal the dish samurai would eat before going into battle, a ritual meal meant to prepare them for death and honor. But first, we have to go deeper into the code that shaped the appetite of a warrior. To understand the samurai's plate, you must first understand their code. Bushido, the way of the warrior, was more than honor and swordsmanship. It was a life philosophy etched into every decision, including what they ate. Discipline, precision, humility. That's what dictated the diet of these warriors. Food wasn't for indulgence, it was for survival, clarity, and control. To the samurai, eating too much was the same as being unprepared for battle, sluggish, weak, and distracted. So what did they eat? Hojicha, roasted green tea, rich and smoky, to calm the nerves. Onigiri, simple rice balls wrapped in seaweed, easy to carry into war. Miso soup, warming, restorative, and packed with umami. Pickled radish or plums called umeboshi, to prevent fatigue and cleanse the palate. And sometimes, wild game hunted in the mountains, roasted over flame. These weren't dishes served in golden bowls, they were battlefield meals. Every bite was chosen with purpose, nothing wasted, no indulgence. Even elite samurai like Takeda Shingen or Oda Nobunaga, men who could command feasts, often chose restraint. Why? Because a samurai must always be one breath away from death, and too much comfort was the enemy of readiness. You might think this sounds bleak, but here's the twist. This way of eating forged mental clarity, raw power, and spiritual readiness. And if you think the simplicity of their meals was brutal, just wait until we reveal the dish samurai ate on the eve of war. A dish as symbolic as the katana itself. They're forged in fire and fed with purpose. Imagine this, the year 1600. The air is thick with silence. Across the fog-covered hills of Sekigahara, 160,000 samurai prepare to clash in what will become Japan's bloodiest battle. And in the shadow of that looming war, one man, Miyamoto Musashi, sits cross-legged before a humble bowl of steamed rice. Not a feast, not wine, not meat dripping in sauce, just rice. Because for the samurai, the night before battle wasn't about indulgence, it was about focus. They believed a simple, clean body led to a sharp mind. No spices to dull the senses, no overfeeding to slow the limbs, just clean carbs to fuel precision and sacred quiet before chaos. But here's what made it brutal. They knew it could be their last meal. This wasn't just rice, it was farewell in a bowl. In some traditions, samurai would eat Gohan rice to give strength and keep the belly light. Miso soup with root vegetables, grounding, earthy, like the battlefield. Tsukemono, pickled greens, sharp, acidic, awakening. And sometimes, a raw egg cracked on rice, a final richness before the blade. No sweet dessert, no comfort food. Only what the soul needed to be ready. And Musashi? He famously fasted before some duels. Fasting, not feasting. Why? Because he believed hunger sharpened the spirit. Imagine stepping into death's embrace with an empty stomach and a full heart. That's not weakness. That's discipline carved into flesh. And here's the punch. You think the samurai were cold and stoic? They weren't. Some would write poetry to their meal. Some would eat in silence with their comrades, knowing this would be the last time they shared rice together. Honor, simplicity, death, all on one plate. But what about the most sacred meal? The one symbolizing courage and defiance? We're not done yet. Keep watching. The most legendary dish of all is still waiting for you. Among the clatter of katana and the thunder of war horses, the samurai carried one thing in their pack. Not armor, not a keepsake, not a good luck charm. They carried umeboshi, a tiny, shriveled, violently sour pickled plum. Why? Because this mouth-puckering bomb of flavor wasn't just a snack, it was the symbol of endurance. The samurai believed umeboshi could ward off illness, preserve strength, and ignite willpower in the heart of fatigue. Imagine trekking for days in cold mountain air. No hot meal, no warm fire. Just a rice ball pressed firm with salt, and at its core, that defiant red umeboshi. It was like biting into lightning. That taste, it slapped you awake. The sour, like a war cry for your taste buds. The salt, a reminder that survival was earned, not gifted. Even in death, it played a role. In many samurai tales, the dying warrior reaches for his last umeboshi, biting into it with a crooked grin. Defiant, unyielding, unforgotten. And let's not forget, umeboshi lasts forever. It doesn't rot. It doesn't fade. Like the samurai spirit, it endures. Here's the crazy part. Modern science now confirms that umeboshi boosts digestion, fights fatigue, and even has antibacterial powers. The samurai weren't just tough. They were generations ahead of their time. But let's pause for a second. You're starting to see it now, aren't you? The samurai didn't eat to enjoy. They ate to survive, to fight, and to leave a legacy written not just in scrolls, but in the grains of rice and the pit of a plum. And yet, one warrior's table eclipsed them all. He never bowed to a lord. He answered to no banner. And he turned food into philosophy. Miyamoto Musashi. What was his final taste before vanishing into legend? You'll find out, just don't blink. What comes next might surprise even the fiercest warrior. They called him Musashi, the Sword Saint, the undefeated. The warrior who wrote his own code fought over 60 duels and walked away from each without a scratch. But before he vanished into legend, he ate. And what he ate may shock you. No banquet, no crowd, no victory, feast with wild boar, or sake flowing like rivers. Instead, a bowl of plain brown rice. That's it. No miso soup. No grilled fish. No pickled plums. Just rice. Why? Because for Musashi, the blade was not the only weapon. Discipline was sharper. Humility cut deeper. This was a man who had mastered every form of combat and still chose a meal that would nourish the body, but not distract the spirit. Rice wasn't just food, it was focus. See, while the lords of the land feasted on roasted sea bream and lacquered trays of delicacies, Musashi chose emptiness. Why? Because he believed that to be unbeatable in battle, you must be unbeatable in hunger. He didn't eat to feel full, he ate to stay sharp. He didn't eat for joy, he ate to endure. In fact, Musashi famously slept on stone floors, dressed in rags, and rejected comfort, so he could never be caught soft. His food followed the same law, brutal simplicity. And before his death, he retired to a cave, not a palace. There, he wrote the Book of Five Rings, laying down his strategies for war, and then, with the same calm breath, ate one final humble bowl of rice. Then he crossed his legs, placed his sword by his side, and passed into the void. That's not just food, that's philosophy carved in hunger. And maybe, just maybe, in that last mouthful of grain, he tasted everything. Victory, sacrifice, solitude, and peace. But you have to ask yourself, could you live like that? Could you eat like that? Could you walk into legend with an empty bowl and a full heart? Now that is what separates the samurai from the rest. But Musashi's spirit? It still lingers in every grain of rice, in every warrior who dares to live with purpose. So, would you eat like a samurai to live like a legend? Because that bowl of rice wasn't just Musashi's meal. It was his message. If this warrior diet gripped your soul, wait until you see what the gladiators of ancient Rome devoured before stepping into the arena. Watch next. The brutal gladiator diet of Spartacus will shock you. Your journey into warrior food history has only just begun. And make sure to subscribe, for our next video will be about the legendary Persian immortal,